I think the big misconception that a lot of people have about producers is they think producers are people who just find financing for their films.
I immediately fell in love with the story and the script.
We were looking for an arresting image that could be well represented in like a little icon on your TV.
There's something about bad sound that just reads as cheap.
This was a case of bend over and lose your filmic virginity, but you'll get a movie made and your name will be on it.
Anytime there's like that amount of money, there's going to be lawsuits.
There's nothing more important than the safety and the health of everyone who's working on a production.
It was like a passion project. They said, we want your movie. It was a bidding war. It was a major bidding war.
You can't buy that kind of publicity.
Welcome to Producerville, the only podcast where we interview producers so that you can become a better producer. I'm Anthony Masi, and I'm here with Nate Ragon, and we're with MasiMedia. And this week, we're featuring Kristina Ceyton, who produced The BABADOOK, the 2014 thriller. Fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, please see it. It stands out in the horror thriller genre, and it's a unique film. Kristina is a co-founder of a company called Causeway Films in Australia. And The BABADOOK was their first feature that they produced. And she worked with Jennifer Kent, who is the writer and director. She's going to talk about how she met Jennifer. The BABADOOK is actually based on a short called Monster, which was also written and directed by Jennifer Kent. And it's basically the story of the BABADOOK in short form. And so it's the first movie we're talking about that was based on a short. She talks about how financing differs in Australia when compared to the United States. They have a whole different way that they do their financing there. So listen up, you might want to shoot your movie in Australia. She talks about the title and how it was problematic during pitches because people thought, The BABADOOK was a horrible title. And so she talks about, how she navigated that. And she talks about that incredible pop-up book. So if you haven't seen the movie, in the movie there's a pop-up book that is sort of central. It's a central prop to the entire plot of the movie. And it's such a unique, intricate, complex item. So she talks about how they went about creating the pop-up book, that amazing pop-up book for the movie.
Yeah, I love that pop-up book. Kristina also talks about how they couldn't use any brown furniture in the movie. She talks about almost losing their main filming location a few days before the shoot. And she talks about how the BABADOOK character became a symbol for the LGBTQ community. Kristina talks about how the BABADOOK got into 2 major film festivals and how they used that opportunity to make the most of the festival that they went with. The film also went on to win many Best Film and Screenplay awards.
Yeah, and it also won a whole bunch of other awards, which is really cool. And, as a producer, you don't think of those things, when you're making a movie, you don't think about the awards. And, what most producers that I know think about when they make a movie is anyone ever going to see this? So to talk to somebody like this who made such a unique film with such a unique or very, very talented writer and director, it must be very satisfying to see all the accolades after the movie came out. So let's listen to the interview. We'll go to that. And then I'm going to tell you what happened after the interview. Kristina sent something to me, and I will tell you what it is when we come back. So enjoy the interview with Kristina Ceyton. This is the first interview that we're doing about a movie that was based on a short. The short is called Monster. It was produced by Isabel Perez, so you weren't credited on there. So can you just tell us a little bit about how you got involved with the BABADOOK?
Yeah, sure. So I didn't produce the short. Jennifer Kent and I actually met at the Aspen Short Fest, where her film screened and won an award. And I remember seeing it and being in the audience. And when that monster comes up the stairs, everyone just like. There was a collective jump.
Yeah, I love that scene.
It's awesome. And we there were only like a handful of Aussies there, and I had another short in there called Small Boxes. And the director of that film was really good friends with her, so we sort of just stayed in contact for years. And she just called me up for advice on a couple of other of her like feature projects she had with other producers. And so we just remained friends and stayed in touch. And then she went off to, to write the feature version of Monster at the Binger Lab, which is kind of like a script, 6-month script hot house in Amsterdam that doesn't exist anymore, but it kind of really fostered writers to write a first draft of their feature. And when just before she finished the first draft, she went like, "What do you think? Do you want to read the first? Do you want to read it when I'm done?" I'm like, "Yeah, for sure." And she sent it to me, and I remember sitting in I sort of had just hired this huge warehouse space, which was completely empty, as an office, sort of shared office. And I was there on my own. It was late at night, and I just got scared, completely terrified, and started locking the doors. And
no way.
I absolutely, I was like, what am I doing? So I immediately fell in love with, with the story and the script. And it's something that, it's kind of funny because for years I was saying, I don't know if I could ever do a horror film, and now I do a lot of that. But it's really this kind of genre and this kind of story. There's so much more to this, this beautiful mother-son story, and exploring grief and exploring, what it means to suppress. And I think for me, it was that I really fell in love with, and telling this story in this genre, which made it so much more formidable and really elevated it to something else. So while it was a first draft and there was still a lot to do, I just went like, definitely want to be there. Jumped on a plane, went to Amsterdam, and we started pitching it at EFM and then Cannes, and started the process kind of straight in.
What is the next step for you as a producer to run with this idea and raise capital for it? How did that all happen?
The way that we finance films in Australia, I think, is a little bit different than in America. So the way that we raise money is mainly through kind of federal and state funding bodies. So basically, it's taxpayer-funded investment that's managed by agencies. And so it's a relatively bureaucratic kind of application system. And part of that, to even qualify, you have to have an international sales agent on board, and you have to have a local distributor, so an Australian theatrical release confirmed, to even get money for the film. So I guess the first part was like, okay, we need a sales agent. So really, while we were still developing the script, I was going to like Cannes and meeting sales agent and pitching and, pitching the project. And that took, I would say that took about a year,
Okay. Long time. Yeah.
All up. Yeah. I think partly because we were still developing, there was interest. I mean, early on we were pitching it as like potentially black and white. Everyone was like, BABADOOK, what's that name? No one can pronounce it. What are you doing? So we were like, no, this is going to be amazing. And we kind of, decided not to go the traditional route and ask again those state agencies or federal agencies for development money. We wanted to really keep the momentum going, not wait for anyone to tell us, here's money to go ahead. So we kind of really put all our other work, aside and concentrated just on the script development. And we were kind of very fortunate that a very, formidable producer, I guess, in Australia, Jan Chapman, who produced The Piano, among other things, came and supported us. So she kind of gave us a bit of money, and that sort of opened the door a little bit to people, It's like it helped the attention on us in the film, and why having someone like her support a horror per se was something quite, quite extraordinary. So that really helped open a lot of doors as well.
You mentioned the development of the screenplay. How involved were you with that?
Oh, very much so. Jen and I worked very closely together. So, we'd have script sessions and feedback sessions, and every now and then we brought in sort of external readers to get an outside opinion. But it was a really important process also for me, I think, to really interrogate what is in her head and what was in her head and what wasn't on screen yet and what didn't quite make sense. So it was kind of like digging, you know, over a period of time, really digging deep into what this is and to make it the best possible, you know, script it could be. Eventually we applied for Australia funding, which is the big kind of production investment funding, and were rejected. And they said, look, you know, we really love it, but the script's too long. You know, the market isn't, the attachments aren't strong enough. You just got to go back and rework it. And we did, and we cut 10 pages. And in some ways, as devastating as it was to get that rejection at that time, you know, having worked a year and a half to get all of that together, it was kind of a blessing, really, because I think it really pushed us to interrogate everything. And that was the moment where we brought Essie Davis on, and everything kind of fell into place.
Wow.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier about the title and how, you know, there were some people that were saying we don't understand what that means. From a producing perspective, how important is the title of a movie? And like in this case, where it's based on a short that had a very different title, can you talk a little bit about that? Like any challenges with it or the decision to go with that title?
I mean, for one, it's really integral to the story and the script and what's, you know, in the actual pop-up book. It needed a name for that, and Jennifer came up with it in kind of, it has to like rhyme with it was born kind of out of the script and the knocking and the, you know, BABADOOK, dook, dook, and so she wanted something that didn't exist but had a fable-like quality to it. It was kind of interesting and funny when I was sitting in these, you know, dark rooms pitching, you know, 20 minutes, every 20 minutes there's a new, you know, you have those speed date pitches, and literally like so many of them said, what's that title? What's that? And I remember one person saying that is the worst title on the planet. And I was like,
I mean, it's all subjective, but I think time will prove it that it was the best title. I mean, it's so great.
I think it already has.
It feels like an evil fairy, like a dark fairy tale, grim fairy tale. That's a movie called The Babadook. So
it does sound like the title of a book, like a children's book.
It does.
Well, you know, exactly. So that was the point, I guess.
So let's talk about how you cast Essie Davis and Noah Wiseman, because they were incredible. They were just incredible. How did you find them?
Well, we worked with an amazing casting director here in Australia called Nikki Barrett. So she kind of helped us with various shortlists, but in the end it was really, we kind of knew we wanted Essie from really early on. Jennifer and her went to acting school together, NIDA in Australia. And so we were kind of down to 2 actors, and then I think they both did a test, and that's when we knew that Essie was the one. And I think for her it was kind of a pretty frightening proposition to start with. But it's a really confronting role, you know, to play. But she trusted and knew Jennifer for like 20 years. They were, you know, best friends, and they've been friends for a really long time. So there's so much trust between them that I think she really kind of went there. And with Noah, it was really about just putting a big call out and getting boys in to audition at various stages, and again he was someone that just stood out and just had that natural talent. And it was very much Jen kind of having been very in tune with actors and what she's looking for and what she believes she can get out of them.
You know, here in the States, you know, everybody's like, well, you know, who's in it? Do they have marketability? Was there any discussion about that, about saying, well, we need somebody who's famous, or did you just want to find the right person? I mean, the filmmaking process is very different between the two countries, but was there any talk about her being famous enough or having cachet regarding like her name, or were you really just looking for the right person?
We were really looking for the right person. I mean, she had a little bit of a name, which helped, somewhat.
Sure.
It kind of helped because we were trying to raise a little bit more money. And then when she came on board, I was able to go back to the sales agent and ask for a bit more. So I used that at that time, but everyone was already on board and everyone had committed. So we didn't really, it's a really low budget film. We started out at, I think, 2.2 million Australian and went up to a final budget of, I think, 2.6. But we didn't need a name because, again, it was low budget, it was, genre, it was a first timer. So I guess one of the advantages of our system here is that, the support we have also very much supports emerging talent, and there's a lot of talent escalator opportunities.
That's
here.
great.
So we're very fortunate in that, and having a tax rebate that's, one of the highest in the world. So we can finance films and be maybe a lot freer, especially early on. I think once you make bigger budget films, there's a necessity to cast up for sure. But regardless, I think any film you make, the person has to be right.
In horror movies, the actors have to bring it. You have to believe them, and I just thought they both did an incredible job. And one thing is about Noah is I've had a lot of friends, all of my friends are in the horror genre, all working on horror movies. And a lot of them have said that kid was so annoying. and I thought that's kind of the point. Guy. Yeah. But wasn't he was supposed to be annoying? He was supposed to send her to the brink of sanity, So were you looking for that quality in him? Were you looking for a kid that could be abrasive in a way? Was that what you were looking for, or did you just no? Okay.
Well, no, it wasn't what we were looking for. That was an exigency of the script that he was that. But to get him to that point in shooting and in filming was, not easy. So those scenes, for example, we scheduled much later. It was the first time that he was, ever interstate, so he normally lives in Sydney. He had to move to Adelaide, be on set for like 6 weeks, and had never acted in front of a crew or in a film before. So it was really kind of creating the environment where we can get him to the point where he can go to those really extreme places and hard places to get to. So it's something that Jen created on set, Jen and Essie together, I guess. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Can you talk a little bit about the location scouting process and, how involved were you with that?
I was very involved. So I was pregnant with my first child when we were shooting the film.
Oh, wow.
Which probably is a good thing because probably gave me these relaxing hormones, I think. But I was still like, so I guess the biggest, I was still like climbing over like fences to get to abandoned buildings. I don't know what I was thinking, but no, I think the biggest challenge was really finding the house location. And it needed to be a terrace house. And I think I knocked on every single terrace in Adelaide, like door to door, leaving, notes, and we just couldn't find anything. It was, I think I went there 2 weeks in advance and literally like walked down everywhere that I knew there was a terrace house.
Wow, and that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, and we just couldn't, we had no money, like we all like had to do everything ourselves pretty much. We had a location scout, but we needed that beforehand, and we couldn't really find anything that wasn't either already renovated or didn't have the right layout. We had this great exterior that we'd found, but the interior just did not work at all, and it became apparent, kind of like in early pre that we're just not going to be able to do that, like even, and couldn't afford it, like move a whole family out and put them up and then, you know, be able to put in like harnesses and drag kids up, you know,
Right.
stairs and bang them against walls and put holes in everywhere. So we're like, I think at that point we're like, we have to build, but we didn't have the money, and so we kind of went back to all our investors and to the South Australian Film Corporation, which had just built their new studios, and they gave us a really good deal, and everyone was like, yeah, that makes complete sense. You're working with a kid, you're working with a dog, you know, we can freely schedule, and raised a bit more money, and also went to Kickstarter actually to raise a bit more money for the art.
Oh, you did? Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Okay. What was that experience like with Kickstarter? I mean, I've heard of various film productions raising, you know, money to do a sound mix, or, you know, what was that like? Because I've used Kickstarter once before. I've used it twice before. Once extremely successfully, and once where it fell on its ass. It just didn't work.
Yeah.
How did it work for you?
It worked well. I think, you know, at the time, it just takes so much time, you know, and effort to really kind of work. But, you know, and in the end, it's mostly like family and friends putting in money anyway. But, but look, I think that's not quite true. I think in hindsight, it was a really good thing to do in some ways, even just for the creating some sort of following really early on, and having this online platform. Like, I mean, we already at that time had created like a color palette and a font and, you know, like a look. So we were quite advanced in kind of that part. And having to build that for the website and for putting it out into the world, I think it kind of honed in a lot of our thinking, I guess.
Okay.
But yeah, it was good. I think we ended up raising maybe 25 grand or something, which you know, which again, as soon as you spend it, you get the tax rebate on top of that, so it's more like 40 grand, and any dollar at that point really helped.
Sure.
So it was just something where we were, I think, already shooting. It started in pre, and then we kind of finished during the shoot.
I have to ask you about that incredible pop-up book, because I want one. I'm going to make one, or I'm going to find one.
Well, you're talking to the right person, I guess.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I loved that pop-up book, and I would have done anything as a kid to have that, because it was just so cool. Because in the short, there's just one pop. You know, there's like that one, at least from my memories, there's only the one page. But in the movie version, there's, you know, page after page, and I don't know, maybe there's a dozen of them. So those books, those pop-up books, need to be engineered. And they're not easy. So how did you go about creating such an unusual prop that was so key to telling the story visually? How did that happen? Because that's not just a common item. You had to custom make it. How did that process go?
Yeah, that was a big thing. So really early on, we were looking for someone who could do that. So we were looking for sort of pop-up, you know, artists, in Australia and really everywhere, just to see. And we came across Lemony Snicket, and the opening titles for that Lemony Snicket series with Toni Collette, I think.
Okay.
It was like, and Alex Uhas is was one of the kind of makers of it, and he's sort of a paper animator, I guess, and designer and artist.
Okay.
And so we were like, oh, he's amazing, and maybe we can, you know, to see if we can find someone like him in Australia. And we just kept looking and couldn't really find anyone. Like, why don't we just ask him? So we reached out to him, and he loved it. And we just got him to come over to Australia, kind of in the early pre, and he was the one that then with Jen, they designed, you know, the creature of the Babadook, and he kind of brought, you know, like paper engineer books and kind of taught it himself how to do it. And it was fine to be kind of it needed to be didn't need to be very polished. It needed to be like a kid could have made it anyway. So that kind of worked.
Interesting.
So the pop-ups in there are relatively simple, but some, some of them a little bit more complex. But when the book returns after she rips it up, that is actually a section we kind of shot separately as well. That we kind of made work in the edit. And then later on, after the film was released, we actually published the book and created extra pages and told the whole story of the book. So there's the actual pop-up book that exists and that we sold as a kind of merchandising, but really only to our fans.
Oh, I didn't know you guys.
I don't know how I missed that.
Yeah, where was it for sale? Because I would have bought one.
Well, we had like a limited first edition, and I think they go for like $1,000 US on eBay now. We sold them for $60 US at the time, or $80 US, and now we just finished doing a second edition.
Oh my gosh!
But yeah, they're around.
Well, please send me information on it, and we'll let our listeners know. I mean, tell us, we'll put information when we launch the podcast about where to buy one and all that, because it's a really remarkable thing. It's so cool.
Yeah, they're really beautiful. And so Alex Uhas did all the pages, and then we got a guy called Simon Arzip, I think, from New York. He's a paper engineer. So with him, we created the proper pop-up book with everything working properly and those additional pages. But they're actually all sold. They're not for sale anymore. We just did like a super limited release to fans only, not publicized. Yeah, but I have a few spares, so we can talk.
Okay, you let me know. I'm definitely going to hit you up. So
okay.
Can you talk a little bit about the use of practical special effects as opposed to CGI?
Yeah, sure. We always wanted to do everything in camera as much as possible, and most of it we did. And I guess it was possible more so to do it in a studio setting, So it's kind of just getting rid of like what do you call it? Like ropes and being clever about shooting it. And then kind of worked with Post House Kojo in Adelaide to kind of enhance things, and but it was literally like building huge wings that we would shoot. We would there's two scenes where Essie floats onto the bed or lifts off the bed. So there's two versions. So one was actually the first one, I think, where she's in the car. And we did this gimbal, so it was actually her going round in this, car with the car accident. So it was all shot in camera, and then she floats onto the bed, and we shot that with her on a dolly and the mattress against the floor, and then the lamp stuck on.
Oh,
so
interesting.
it looks like you're on top. So we did that one that way, and then the second time where she floats up, she was kind of on a plank, and we let her down, and then we just reversed it and got rid of the ropes, and we tried to sort of and then there's a couple of scenes where I think I guess what else was there was Noah going up the stairs, which he was kind of on a little plank, and we pulled him up, and him being thrown against the wall where we would have someone on the other side, and it was a soft wall. And so we tried to kind of come up with ways that would, I guess, always motivated by character and making it as real as possible. And always being with the characters as much as possible without it looking like it's comped in or CGI'd. And I think it usually works the best, really. Plus, we didn't have the money to do it any other way.
Right. Do you remember what kind of cameras you used?
I think we used the Arri Alexa. And we had a beautiful DOP, a Polish DOP called Ragon, who just had a beautiful eye. So he did, you know, and I guess the design helped with all the different sort of dark colors, and everything had to be either black or white or blue or maroon. Nothing was allowed, not one single piece of furniture was allowed to be brown. Everything had to be stained.
What was the reason for not having any brown furniture?
Because initially we wanted it to be as kind of black and white as possible. I guess because it gives you that level of, one, it's the films that I think Jennifer was inspired by, those old expressionistic films, and that palette really lends itself to being so much more expressionistic. So we wanted the palette to be kind of black and white, but still allow those bits of color. So if you do look at it, you will see that there is nothing kind of, you know. The production designer was like, oh my God, I have to fill this whole house, and every single item had to be stained or colored or going insane.
You know, I'm going to go back and watch the movie just to watch that, because I guess I didn't realize that, but it does have this sort of, this weird dreamlike quality to it.
When you go to those heights, you can't have this huge kind of raw, realistic looking, you know, environment.
Sure.
We wanted to create something that was story fable like from the get-go, so that the leap to those, you know, I guess extremes, you make that believable, and it's not such a big leap, and it's within the world of the film. So that was always that was kind of the reason.
No, that's fascinating, and I think that would be very helpful for producers listening, is consider, you know, I mean, consider the cinematography, obviously, but like, I think in the movie, The Sixth Sense, there are, I think M. Night Shyamalan used pops of red here and there, and it helped tell the story, and, you know, so this is more in line with that. I find
or the Black Swan, I think. Black Swan was the same. I think it was all white and a little bit of pinks and blues, I think, as well.
Yeah. And I think of those things you don't notice them, and you really shouldn't notice them. I mean, you're being carried along, and it's painting a picture for you, and so I find that fascinating. So, was there anything that happened during the production that was particularly challenging?
We lost one of the main locations, like 3 days before we were meant to shoot there, I think, because the so this is Claire's house, you know, Amelia's sister's house. And again, it was not an easy house to find, because again, it needed to be black and white, and, you know, have all those qualities that we needed, and have a backyard that you could put up. Anyway, so it was really the house. I remember finding it because it was on sale on some website, and I just knocked on the door, and she just got really scared off, because we had you know, we had all this crew come in, there's these requests, can we change this, can we change that, and she just went like, I'm selling the house, I've got 4 kids, you know, we just can't do it. And so we went in overdrive and like driving around and trying to find other places, but I was like, okay, I've just got to sit down and write her an essay about everything that we're going to do, and protect the house, and change it around, and just use this area, and don't let anyone in. And so we kind of pulled down our requests, you know, to an absolute minimum, and just gave her the confidence that that we're going to look after the house, and that we really needed it. And then she said yes. So it was literally, I think, the day before that she agreed to do it after all. So it's like things like that come up all the time. And and we did have it was the first feature. It was, you know, we had to use mainly crew from South Australia, and could only bring in a couple of sort of heads of departments, like the production designer, and I think that was almost it. So it was a mix of experienced and inexperienced crew, but I think in the end, everyone just came on and got behind it, and were willing to put in, we needed like more time to shoot because it was, a film that was, had a lot of scenes. So while it was not a long page count, it was maybe 86 pages or something, the script, there were like, I don't know, 160 or 170 scenes. So it was so bitsy that it made it really complex to schedule. And I remember the completion guarantor ringing me, I think it was day 2, and they said, you got it, like, which scenes are you going to cut?
Right.
I was like, we're on day 2 of a 6-week shoot. I think I don't really want to make that call right now. And in the end, look, I said, look, let's just see how we go, and we'll manage it. And we in the end asked the crew to give us 3 days for free.
Oh. How did that go?
Well, they all came on. What we did, we said, look, what we'll do is we'll defer you, so you will get paid from returns, and you'll get a 10% uplift. And when we make our money back, any money that goes to us as producers or as the director or returns, 100% of that first goes to pay you guys off, and then us, and they all got their money back plus 10%. And so it was, it was good to be able to honor that, but it was really about like everyone just coming together and wanting to make the best film, and that was great. But it's not an easy thing to ask,
Can you talk a little bit about the editing process and doing like the sound mix and stuff like that, if there was any challenges with that?
I think where I learned a lot was managing investor feedback and really protecting the vision and learning to protect the vision of the filmmaker, and the way that you filter feedback, I think is something that I think needs to be handled really carefully, because it is such a vulnerable time, I guess, when you're there and for the writer, director, and having suddenly all this feedback come in, some of it which was good, but some of it was honestly like idiotic, and having to like answer super silly questions about, I don't know, like, especially because we had to lock before we'd done the sound design and before we'd done the VFX. So, cleaning up everything. So it I think for many people, even though they say they know how to see a film in an unfinished state,
right,
sound is like at least 50% of the viewing experience. That's when everything locks in. And with a horror film like that, without, just looking at a black wall and you go, yeah, this is where the things disappear and the monster comes up, and then,
your imagination can only go so far.
yeah, exactly. So we had feedback like, we had one particular person, I won't mention, sort of go, you need to cut the film, you need to end when she's in the basement and feeds and then it's like, kind of leave it at this cliffhanger for the BABADOOK 2, and can you cut out all the sisters and you just make it like only about the horror film, and so she basically said, like, if we took all his advice, the film would be like 30 seconds long. So I think when you really know what the story is about and what you're trying to achieve, and are in tune with your director and trust that vision, and you've lived it for so long that you trust that and protect it and be strong and go, we know what we're doing. So and they did in the end, and it worked out, thankfully. But at that point, you just don't know. You just have to follow your gut, I suppose.
Sure.
How did you find the composer?
Jed was, so he's Justin's brother, Justin Cazell's brother, who did Snowtown, and Jen and Justin is Essie's husband.
Okay.
So we kind of knew of his work. We saw Snowtown, Justin Cazell did Snowtown, the Snowtown Murders, I think it's called in the US. And we really loved how the sound design and the music were kind of worked so well together and intertwined. And we were working with the same sound designer, Frank Lipson, and approached Jed to do the music. And he just does beautiful work. So it was just kind of knowing that process, how that process worked, that collaboration between sound and music, and Jen being she's incredible in sound design. Like, she's got an amazing ear and is very, very involved. So she kind of, guided that process a lot.
How did you, it's like a soundtrack is, it's an abstract thing. There's no score until someone writes it. So how do you convey to a composer that you like what kind of music you're hearing in your head? Because it's an intangible thing, and it's all abstract. Because were you happy with the soundtrack?
Oh, I think it's beautiful. Yeah, we've released it as well as a separate vinyl, I think. So
I have it. I have the vinyl with the pop-up and everything.
Yeah.
In it.
Cool. Yeah, it's look, I think I actually can't quite remember, to be honest, whether we had a guide track. We probably had some guide tracks during the edit, and references, and I think we asked Jed to do some initial kind of like stings, and then it was really trying to work out where we needed those extra sounds, and there's a lot of back and forth. You just kind of have to trust, and there's failed attempts, and really it's about communicating in a way that kind of makes sense to them both. I guess. Don't know if that really answers the question. I think it's always... No,
it does. It does.
It's always a different process, I think, for every film in some way. But again, I think there was a lot of love and trust, and like I said, knowing each other for a while, and just communicating what kind of music she wanted and where, and him really getting it.
I think producers don't realize how important the score is. They shouldn't underestimate the power of the score. And movies like Halloween and the classics in the genre they teach you that music is vital, especially for a horror movie. And so that's why we bring it up. It's so important, and I love the Babadook score. So
and I think what's also super important in horror films is silence, like not hearing anything, and just choosing your moments. And it's a subtle thing, right? So that you don't feel so manipulated,
right?
That it takes you out of the movie. but that it's again, it's like the subliminal thing, and I think that's where I'm a big fan personally of sound and music blending in. And we worked with Jed again on The Nightingale, which has basically no music, but just some, very, very little. But I think sound and music is often underestimated, and I really do believe that the film is half finished without it.
Yeah, I would agree. So tell us about Sundance and how that journey was. That must have been super exciting to get your film in Sundance. Did you cut a trailer that wowed them? Did you tell us about that whole experience?
It was incredible. We actually, I don't know if I should say this, but probably fine. So we got into Toronto, and then Sundance said they wanted it, and then it was like this. We had to make a decision, right?
Right.
True. Is that okay to say? Probably is, isn't it?
Yeah, why not?
It's noble, right? I'm like, maybe they'll just, never select another film of ours. No. So so we had to make a decision, Toronto's an amazing festival, but it has got a lot of films, and Sundance, I think particularly for sort of auteur-driven films, it's just such a filmmaker friendly, and it's such a great launch pad for directing talent. So I think it was really working with Charlotte Mickey, who at the time was with E1, who's our sales agent, kind of working out, making that decision. And she initially really pushed for Toronto, and we were kind of, you know, I was kind of managing that process and going, we don't want to, you know, we want to make that decision together, you know, do the right thing by the film. But really, I think it was once she brought on John Schloss, who helped. The biggest thing for us was, okay, if we go with Sundance, we need a good slot. So we need to be in the opening weekend. We need to be, you know, we need to, rather than get lost, say we didn't want, that was kind of the thing that got us over the line. And he managed to get us on the first Friday night, midnight at the Egyptian. And that was when everyone was like, yeah, let's go for that, because that's like superb, you know, for the film to be in the first couple of days. So that was kind of, that's something that was really important to kind of position the film at the festival. And then we worked with a company here in Australia called Solid State, who cut the trailer, and we, you know, again, we briefed them on what we felt we wanted, and that we didn't want to give too much away, but also didn't want it to be too horror. It was always that thing, is it a psychological horror, or is it a supernatural horror, or, you know, how do you position this film so that you have also expand into the kind of broader, you know, I guess art house audience, and find the right audience for it, because it's not a teen horror. You know, you need to kind of, like, teenagers are just bored to tears, you know.
It's not a Friday the 13th movie.
yeah. So I think you know, that really helped us, I guess, create a lot of buzz. And we brought on a great PR company, Strategy PR, who kind of really helped pitch it and kind of send out screeners to select critics before Sundance. So kind of like a tastemaker and buzz creator. And the way that they work is they send it out, and they send it to fairly highbrow kind of critics as well. But if they don't like the film, they don't say anything.
Exactly.
It's kind of that's kind of the deal. So I think it really helps sort of create a lot of buzz beforehand, and I think and then a lot of agents and a lot of you know, like buyers and everything were at that first screening. So
so if you were to say to an indie producer, do your best to position your movie, if you get accepted at Sundance, if that should happen, you'll position it on a night that is a popular night, and don't get lost. And while you're and also beforehand, try to create buzz beforehand, and then when you're on the ground there, you try to mobilize people to go see your movie, pretty much. Did you guys have postcards and stuff? Were you like literally walking around handing out postcards to say, come see my movie?
I think we made little pins.
Oh, neat. Okay.
Pins and tote bags. And, you know, Sundance select like a couple of films that they screen to all their volunteers. And they were all like wearing the Babadook pin and bags and stuff, which was really awesome. So they got behind it as well. So there's all these different ways that you can do that. Yeah, we had, you know, I think we had postcards. I think we were talking about, we brought the Babadook book with us so that we could, you know, show it to people when they first went in. So there's a few things I think that really help, like a little bit of merchandising, a little bit of, you know.
I also have to ask about the Babadook becoming sort of this symbol for the LGBTQ community. I mean, because I'm part of that community, and so when I saw it, I just was like, what the hell? This is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Come out of the closet. You know what? I think it was an algorithm mistake at Netflix. So it somehow... I believe that the Babadook landed under the LGBTQI section, and that's how it started.
That's kind of cool. Because the Babadook was everywhere. He was like, the Babadook was wearing holding the rainbow flag, and it was so funny and so
it's hilarious.
incongruous.
Had nothing to do with us. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's what I was going to ask. Was there any kind of clever behind the scenes, you know? And I guess it just sounds like a fluke, a great serendipity.
Total fluke. I think we were like nominated for an award at like a Mardi Gras film festival, and they rang and we're like, look, I think we should give this, the prize should go to someone who actually, you know.
Yeah.
So we kind of declined it because we felt like it wasn't really, you know, shouldn't go to us really. It should go to a film that is really about that.
Right.
that community. But it was very funny. It took us a while to go like, what? But it's awesome. I think it's great that it took on its own life, and yeah.
Yeah. So cool.
So were you involved at all in the design of the poster and, you know, some of the marketing materials like that?
Yeah, we actually did the poster just with the icon, the BABADOOK icon.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few other posters around, like in America. I think there's a couple of people like Mondo did a couple of posters, and in the UK they did a completely different campaign. But the one with just the, you know, the icon, that we did that, like Jen and I, and we just got, that was, yeah, kind of us. We just knew that we wanted that image as the poster. We felt like that was the most iconic way,
sure,
you know, recognizable way to use that image that is in front of the book, you know, so that we used, and then and we had the font. So it was kind of working with a company, but really there was nothing that we really loved, and we very quickly came back to our initial idea of just going the simple.
In horror, it's best to have a unique image. You know, when the Weinsteins made all their movies, Dimension Films, they were all the actors' faces, and it just, their posters just were so uninspired. And so I loved the BABADOOK's marketing. It's immediately identifiable as horror. Like when I look at it, I go, "That's a horror movie." But also, it's its own brand. It's so different, and but it's also
it's art too. It's like it's art. It's not like, it doesn't look like a Photoshop, you know, job, like a lot of posters around here look like.
I think all the posters or most of the posters that are out there are really awesome, I think. Really
absolutely. Them. So in looking back, Kristina, over the entire production, is there anything you would have done differently?
Look, I'm sure there's 100 things that I would have done differently, but in the end it worked out, you know, luckily on that one. Like you just go like, trust your gut. And the thing is, the BABADOOK, I honestly wasn't sure whether it was going to be a piece of shit or whether it's going to be great, you know?
Right.
You honestly did not know until the screening at Sundance. We were like, we're just going to get torn apart by the critics, but you just don't know.
Right.
So like,
you did?
Honestly, then, well, no, we didn't. But the thing is, you just go, well, whatever happens, at least I can, whether it's successful or not, like you trust what you've done and you get behind that and you're proud of, you know, at least you didn't compromise for someone else's sake. The biggest thing I think is really getting into the head and understanding what you're trying to do and what the story you're trying to tell, and that collaboration. Yeah, that collaboration with the author, I think, is the most important thing. The story, protecting the story above all, protecting the film.
Yeah, and you know, you also had Jennifer Kent, who obviously is an amazing filmmaker. So you were working with somebody, and you were able to see Monster. So you were able to kind of see at least a little piece of. You were able to see something that gave you confidence in her as well, and.
Yeah, one, you see the work that they've done previously, but the way they talk about the film, how they talk about it, how passionate they are, that it's truthful, that it's, you know, that it kind of makes everything make sense. So you know what you're protecting, and I think the biggest thing, you know, there's so many challenges, but I always trusted her. So I think that was the thing that was really important.
Do you think it's worth shooting a short for every feature as kind of maybe a concept? I mean, it worked out for the BABADOOK. You had Monster to sort of work off of and develop. Do you think that's something that should be done for every movie?
No, not every movie. I think you don't need it for every movie. What I think is important, it's got to be kind of a standalone and stand on its own feet. Sometimes you can reverse engineer ideas, but it doesn't always work out. And it's not always necessary. I mean, for example, with the other film that we did called Cargo, a short film existed, and that kind of was the springboard idea then to do the feature. So it worked out there. We're currently working on an Aboriginal kind of psychological horror where we actually did that, where we developed the feature film and shot the proof of concept at the same time. So I think it makes sense if you're not a proven filmmaker yet, if you haven't kind of made a short in that particular genre before, and without it, it would be really difficult to finance and show to investors, to investors, what it might feel like, or that you as the director have that vision and have that confidence and that voice. But it really depends. But it's helpful if it works out, but it's got to be successful.
Right. Can you produce something you don't connect with, or is that something?
No, I think you have to connect with it. Otherwise, I don't think you'd be able to really contribute creatively. And I think you have to. I think you have to feel deeply. If you don't feel deeply about it, I don't think anyone else will. Yeah. And you want to be able to share that vision of whoever you're working with, and have that trust. And we're the interface to everything. We're protecting this, and you need to be behind it and completely. And I think it can be. We're not really necessarily all about genre. It really depends if we fall in love with the project or the filmmakers, and it's got something to say about the world we live in.
I love the character development. I love the relationship between the mom and the son in the movie. And that's what I see when I watch the movie. I don't see the monster.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what resonates with me with it. And I thought, wow, isn't that great? And you don't see that done enough. You don't see that enough as well done as the Babadook did it. So,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you for making such a great movie.
Yes, absolutely.
Pleasure.
Awesome. Well, Kristina, it's been amazing speaking to you. I've been looking forward to this, and I was so hoping that you would say yes. And then when you did, I just did a happy dance and was like, I can't wait to speak with her. So we hope you had fun.
We did. This was great. Thank you so much. It's great that you're doing this. It's something I wish I had at the time.
Right? Exactly. That's why we're doing it.
It's very hard, to find other producers talk about their work, right?
Yeah. Well, Kristina, thank you so much, and I hope we didn't go. It was only an hour and 11 minutes, so it went over a little bit, but we tried to do our best.
It was fun. Thank you so much.
Kristina was amazing, wasn't she?
Yes, she was awesome.
I like how she said she really couldn't produce something she wasn't in love with. It has to resonate and comment on the world we live in and stuff. So, I mean, I had such respect hearing those comments from her. So everyone listening, Kristina sent me the pop-up book. So as you heard in the interview, they did this Kickstarter where they actually paid a paper engineer, and they added some new pages to it, I think, that aren't in the movie, and they created this Kickstarter, which I had no idea about. And then when she said on the call that they're all sold out, my heart sank, because I was like, I need this book. I mean, it's just, I love it so much. I think it's such a unique prop. And so she emailed me and said, hey, I have a couple of first editions and I'll just send you one. And about a week later, it was in my mailbox. I mean, I almost died. It was like the coolest thing ever. So I cherish it. But not only is she a talented filmmaker, she's a very generous person. And so I was very, very happy to get that from her. And if anyone's ever listening and we ever meet, I'll be happy to show it to you.
So next week, we're going to be talking to Nick Phillips, who produced a film called Pet. It's an amazing film. If you guys haven't seen it, I highly suggest you check it out before the interview next week. One of the interesting things about Nick is that he actually used to be a studio producer before he became an independent producer. So he gives a lot of very interesting insight on the differences of being at a studio versus independent.
Yeah, so he gives us a different perspective there, which is great. Okay, so Thank you, everybody, for listening to Producerville. We're signing off, and we will see you next week.